Hello, and welcome to
Out to Society.
today's topic is spirituality.
You know, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that...
Okay.
That's what that means.
Yes, biggest statement out there, alright? When I was actively going to church, it was a huge thing. Even I've said it. I'm not really religious, I'm spiritual. What it really comes down to is I don't really believe these things. I don't listen to the word by word interpretation. I go with the spirit and the flow of things. And that's what, to me, that's what spirituality versus religion is. Religion is you follow the text and the word. Spirituality is you look for the deeper meaning and what connects with you.
You basically don't want to be tied to the people who commit all the genocides.
Yeah, that is also very accurate. Yep. Because, I mean, you think about what are the things you're cherry picking out of there. Spirituality literally means I'm cherry picking. And the things you're picking out are, well, the Bible says slavery is okay, and it says rape is okay, and it says killing your child because they said screw off is okay. And so they're like, those are the things I don't pay attention to, but everything else is the greatest moral book in the world, so we have to listen to it.
See, now that's unfortunate because that to me is not what spirituality is. Spirituality is connecting to something other than yourself on a level that you physically can't comprehend.
That's all we're saying.
Well, but
Yeah, because
you're talking about, well, okay, fine.
because
I don't know.
what
You
you're
talk
doing
about it.
is
So what you said is what we're saying. We're saying that we're not paying attention to the common, the book, the sermons, the mass, the rituals, all that stuff.
Yeah,
we're
so
getting rid of that and going
right.
for the
Right.
essence.
bigger
But the
picture, how to
reason-
move forward.
Right, I guess the reason I said the way I did is because the way you're saying it is, oh, I'm just going to cherry pick.
No.
I'm only gonna believe
He
what
was
I
saying
want.
that's what they do.
Yeah, most of the people say, I'm spiritual.
Right.
That's
Right.
what those people are
I know,
saying
and that's
to
what
do.
I'm saying. To me, that's not what spirituality is.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that that's maybe how they interpret spirituality, but that's not what spirituality is.
Well, that's your opinion.
Well, yeah,
Well,
but I mean,
right,
at
it
the
is
same
my
time,
opinion.
though, you can see how those two connect because what you're saying is you're connecting to something outside of yourself that you physically can't comprehend. Well, what you're doing when you're cherry picking these things is you're finding, okay, my society and culture says this, my tradition says this. Let me go through and try and find the things that I can connect with to find a path forward so our tradition can carry over into our culture and our society. And that's, in my opinion, that's the thing you're actually getting in there. That's the thing you're connecting with is our history and our culture. You're like, I need to connect with our culture because I need to understand where it came from, but it can't be in the same way that my ancestors did it. And that to me is what, that's what they're connecting with is the spirits of their forefathers in a way. You know what I mean? Because without the religions that we have, we wouldn't have any of the countries we have, in some ways. Does that make sense? Does that connect the two, or did I just confuse?
No, I'm so lost. But
Yeah,
it is
she's
not
lost.
you.
Okay.
It
So-
is me.
We'll ignore her
It's
for
okay.
now.
Yeah,
she
it's
can chip
totally
in
fine.
later.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the bigger picture here, though, is in today's society. The whole point of religion really has been an easy way that makes society work.
Right.
So if you look at the Bible, like the Ten Commandments, for instance, they were a thing that at that point in time, those things would keep society from collapsing.
Yes.
Because, they make sense. Don't kill people, don't steal their shit, don't fuck their people, don't eat pork. Because at the time,
People
pork
get
was
sick.
very
Yep.
sick. So it all made sense. They just basically used this God as a ruler that you couldn't escape,
Right.
that you couldn't lie to. That was the whole point of it. So, I get that. Society needs that. With the whole movement of atheists, I don't think... there's nothing wrong with being an atheist.
Right.
Actually, there's atheists that are better Christians than Christians.
Yes.
But the point is, society does need something to keep it moving forward because, as we've talked in the past, people are dumb.
Right.
So, that is an essential. Now, can you separate it, though, from this ruling by fear? which is what the Catholics have done for millennia now. You know, you either do things how I tell you or you go to hell.
Mm-hmm.
So can you like get away from that a little bit and be more accepting? I get that you need to set some boundaries because people are animalistic and are going to do horrible things if they don't have them. But why do you have to tie in this whole epic tale of, you know, if you don't do what I tell you, you're going to go to hell and burn?
In my opinion, I think it comes down to we're natural storytellers. It's how we learn. The more drama you add to something, the better we're going to retain that information. That's just how we learn. Like even from children, you look at how children learn. They literally play house. They are watching their parents and then they act it out.
Well, we imitate what we see.
Right.
That's our thing.
And that's I think how most of the stories got started. But I mean, and if you actually think about not Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, the Trailblazer. Which one was he? Anyway, there's a guy who was really famous, and it was either Davy Crockett or Daniel Boone or somebody like that. But there is an entire American mythos about this guy, and he lived 1700s, 1800s, and there's an entire mythos that says this guy found the mechanisms of how the world works, stopped the sun so that he could get people across the plains. These are real stories Americans made up about this man. So it's like that shows you right there how within one generation, like you just like, yeah, I don't know this guy, but my kids are bored and I'm going to tell them the story. And so you think about, like, if the Israelites did come out of some captivity or something, they had one good leader, and he was all like, listen, we're going to set these boundaries because you guys are acting like fucking savages, and I'm really sick and tired of you guys coming to me with every problem you have. Mm-hmm. And then an entire mythos gets created around that, and you have more judges than that, and they just are like, well, yeah, it was just one guy, Moses. He came up with everything, and the wisdom we got from our cultural forebears, that is what the wisdom of God is.
Mm. It could be a lot more simpler. I mean, the sense of who's going to listen. So, in our society, right, we listen to people who have some kind of credential. Mm-hmm. So, back then, there really was no way of having credentials. So, what's the best credential you could have? God spoke to me.
Yeah, but do you think that was it? Do you think that...
it was that simple?
I don't think so. I think you had to have a certain amount of charisma.
Oh, no. That's right. Part of it, though. But, like... the only, like, vouching thing for you is, oh, yeah, I had a talk with God the other day, and he told me we had to do this.
Right.
So, I think that was just their way of getting people to do what they wanted. But, yes, you had to be charismatic in order to get people to believe you.
I mean, and if, like, I know that...
either that or scare them enough, which they did.
This is probably just me having a bad definition of what biological evolution is, but, I mean, if you think about the way that we evolved from primates, and like you said with that experiment with the mice, how the more non-aggressive stayed up here, and the least non-aggressive stayed up here, the more non-aggressives were on the bottom. You can see how that could play out in human society. You have one guy who's all like, you guys are all crazy, how about we put down some ground rules? And like you said, the only thing they're going to respond to is fear. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you have a more primitive mind that it's like, it's anger or aggression part is more on key, because they're like, we're fighting off everything from other humans to lions, so you need that.
And that's just built into our DNA, and our instinct is we will follow the strongest person or the smartest person, because they are going to keep us, within reason, because they are going to keep us alive longer.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, do you think looking back in time, people will look at some of the movies and the entire universes, like the Marvel universe, and think these are what they worshipped? These are what they spent their time studying?
So, it could be to some degree. I mean, I don't know if at any point in time, just to give an example, if the Greeks ever actually believed in a pantheon, or if that was like their storytelling.
Yes, that's what I want.
So I don't know, and the fact is, there isn't that many written accounts, and the accounts that are written are by somebody's student or somebody, like, that's all we know. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it comes down to interpretation about the little scattered bits that we have. So you might have a good point there. They might have just thought of it as a fairy tale, and that's it.
I have never thought that. That is such an interesting thing to think about.
Well, something that Richard Dawkins talks about is the memes that help species survive. So I'm pretty sure the way it works is a meme would be like a bird's nest. It is an essential structure for that animal to stay alive, or an anthill. You know, the things that it's like, how did they learn this without knowing it? Because it's programmed into them. That is a meme. How do we learn religion? How do we create religion without ever really being told about it? It's literally what keeps societies together. So it has to be there for us to move forward.
And if you look at it, every single tribe isolated, everybody's always come up with something. It's like one of the first things the human brain started to do. It's like it starts to hallucinate and it comes up with reasonings for it.
Right.
Now, here's the bigger picture, though, from it all. The way it worked was perfectly fine at one point. But now, it is no longer any good.
Yep.
Now,
it's an
we still
outdated
need
mode.
something like it, but not what we have. Because if anything, what it's doing now is dividing us.
Yes.
Because now you have the Christians against the Muslims, and the Muslims against the Jews, and the Jews against everybody, because clearly. But anyway, why? We're all people, we're all the same. So what if in, you know, some bizarre possibility that somebody got it right, just because, you know, some parallel universe it has to be true. Who cares? It's not right now. It's what comes later, and then if you got it wrong, you got it wrong. So who cares if you believe in this
And-
or opposed to that?
I have this debate with my mom all the time because she was, you know, was born and raised Catholic, and you know she, you know, God has a bigger plan for me, and I was, you know, same way. I was born and raised Catholic until a certain point where I was like, I don't like this. This doesn't make sense to me. So you're saying that if I go on a mass killing spree and I put my hands together, look up, and say, "Forgive me," magically the cardinal sin that I've committed of murder is magically forgiven. I'm allowed into heaven.
So if you're being very following the proper words, just saying it doesn't mean shit. It's actually truly feeling repentful.
Yeah.
So,
but so going back to what you said, if it does, it's not going to happen until later on, and if it does, who cares? My mom's like, I would rather believe and then be wrong than not believe and still and then be wrong that way. But I don't like the idea of letting something control.
She's not wrong in one sense. Here's my opinion. I will do what I feel is right. Like, I will go blindly into what I believe, truly feel is right. And at the end, you know, if I was wrong, then I can't technically be punished because I did what I truly believed was right. I never did something knowingly that was wrong.
Trump thinks grabbing women by the pussy is the right thing to do.
So I have two things. The one
If they let you, it's okay.
Consensus queen.
But as far as, like, you know, if you have the right one or not, so, you know, they always say, well, you know, there's no evidence for God, blah, blah. But if God is all-knowing and omnipotent, he knows what it would take to convince you that there's a God, so why hasn't he done it yet?
Free will.
Yeah, you say that, but even with free will, you could still create a system in which it's like, yes, it's your choice, but I will definitely...
No, because the moment you know, it's no longer free will, because you know what the right thing has to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, but if there's a hell, then that takes free will.
I'm just playing devil's advocate
right,
here.
No,
I think it's ridiculous, but if you want to think like a Christian... What makes you holier than thou, because that's the whole point of it.
The truth.
Well, no, the thing that makes them better than everybody else is that they don't know and they're using it through faith.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and that's the thing, though. If Christians hold on to the truth, but yeah, there's a lot of arguments. Anyway, I'm not going to go there because I've heard them all. But my other point was something that I feel like could actually take the place of religion is I really like Sam Harris, and one thing he was like, I was very logically minded. I was an atheist. I went to college. I never understood spirituality. He's like, and then I did psychedelics, and it opened my mind, not to a spirituality realm, but to the fact that we're all connected in these ways. And so he's like, then I got into meditation and all these different things, and he's like, and that's what it is. even if you're talking about spirituality, it really kind of takes you to a place where you care more for the other peoples in that society. And so the things that make you more empathetic, those things that make you open up and say, oh, everything's not about me, those are the things that I think will grant you true spirituality. So like you were saying with this whole, you murdered 18 people. If you came to a point where you realized, oh shit, how many lives did I affect? It wasn't just my anger. I hurt their families. I hurt this. And you actually come to be like, I am so sorry and I won't do it again. That means that, yes, you're repentant in that source. But the Christians would say you can only get that through God. And we know that that's not true.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so my thing is why I shied away from religion was when I found out, like, Christianity is one of the world's youngest religion of only being, 2,000 years old? And there's
it's older than Islam and Mormonism and
Scientology.
But
here's the other thing.
Scientology for sure. But
when you have Christians against Muslims, isn't Jesus the Muslims
he's a prophet?
VP?
He's not.
No,
he's a prophet. He's not a savior.
No.
Okay,
So Jesus comes as a prophet, then Muhammad is the last prophet.
Yeah, so I mean, they're all tied one way, shape, or form through
because
that.
they all started in the same root.
Yes, they're all the Abrahamic God.
Yeah. So then, going back to the Christian, that's why I shied away from it. It was the youngest, but it's magically the right one. You know what I mean? But I guess
they all think they're the right one.
Yeah.
And the only way they can claim that is because it was Jesus' resurrection, and that's why Christians can say, "I know for a fact."
Yeah.
Because
That's just
now the thing though is that, like he just mentioned, the thing is all the ones you mentioned, they all come from the same exact root.
Yeah.
And they were all the same thing that split.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now, if you look at India's religions and their multi-gods and the Brahma and all that, that it's completely different, yet it's the same story.
Right, and I've even heard people argue for the Hindu faith where it's like, you have to stop thinking of it as a polytheistic thing because it's like there really is one spirit, it just represents itself in different ways.
But not just that, the idea of Jesus Christ exists in Hinduism.
Oh.
They have a similar...
like a savior story,
They
resurrection, yep, I've heard that.
Just about every religion has one.
Yep.
And so it's
it's not anything new.
It comes back to what if it's all the same thing, but we're humans, so we're fucking up the story because it was all told through person to person. Nothing was written. So we've all literally taken the same story and messed it up.
Well, one thing I will say that I have a deep respect for native cultures. I have a native friend where I work, and one thing he says is they have storytellers, and these storytellers are the only ones allowed to tell their culture stories. And if they mess up one word, if they screw up one line, they are never allowed to tell that story again. They cannot teach it to anyone, they cannot say it, and if enough people forget it, then that story is forgotten to time forever. And I think about that, I'm like, how amazing is that? Because if the story is so old and outdated, you don't want to remember it anymore, it fades away from your culture so that you remember the ones that are still affecting you.
Which I don't know how... because I've only gotten this from movies because I never looked into it. But so the movie Coco, for existence, with the Day of the Dead. If you forget about, if you don't put your family's picture up and you forget about them, they're gone forever.
Yes, and
it's very similar in that regards. There should always be somebody along the line that can remember and keep that person alive, because when you forget about them, they're gone.
I heard a point on this. I think it was every human has 3 deaths. They have the death of their innocence, their physical death, and the death of their memory. So once the people who remember you forget you, then that's a final death, because you are gone in the vast sweeps of history. Nobody's going to remember you. And that can be a depressing thought, but you just think about, okay, but how many of my children, my grandchildren, how many of them are going to think back, and what did I do to provide for them? Even if I'm forgotten, I will set up my family in a way that my line will continue onward in a way. You know what I mean?
But that kind of thought leads to pyramids.
I mean, that is also true, but I mean, it also leads to some of humans' greatest accomplishments. Why do Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos do these things? They want to be remembered. It is such a driving force within humans to never be forgotten. And that's why
What's my legacy?
Right. And I am curious to consider if humans can download their consciousness at some point. They have the Neuralink in there and it can read your past, and once we learn more about this, there could be a possibility of us saving our memories and thought processes.
Which has been a an idea for a
For-
long time,
yes,
and
a
it
very
has all
long
sorts
time.
of horrible repercussions.
Yes. So the question then becomes, what is going to happen to society if we can do that? If we know we aren't going to die, we don't have a need to fulfill that legacy. You know, because it's like, yeah, I won't be forgotten because I can just keep living. So it's a good question. Like, what's going to happen if we take
So
away that
I think
driving
it comes
force?
down to like what drives you.
Yep.
So I don't create curriculum and make my lessons and like oh god, I can't even begin to tell you how much work it was creating a virtual curriculum that closed the gaps that we identified for virtual clinical over the entire summer. It took me all summer to get it all written out. And I didn't do that so that my name could be on it and people would remember me. It was because I wanted to make sure that the nurses were sending out into the field who
Right.
don't have the luxury of going
Yep.
to the clinical site still get that experience they need. And so you kind of mentioned this before. You said someone said something about, you know, learning to care about the other people more than yourself. That is called self-actualization. And that is where every human should be trying to get. Because once we get there, that's when, in all honesty, all of this
what you're
religion,
saying,
spirituality
that's
stuff.
actually one of the core tenets of like Catholics that most people don't pay attention, is that you should be doing everything for others, not for yourself. The whole concept of charity, the whole concept of what is it? It's
Altruism.
Is it?
Yeah,
it's like
altruism,
it's like
Selfless.
service to others. Like that is the goal of in their view of what life should be. Your life should be lived in service to your peers.
Oh, see,
And
I'm
see-
the opposite.
But yeah, the problem though can then become the culture so restricts the feelings of self-motivation of no, I am like, because if you don't understand where it's coming from and you listen to it at face value, you start to feel I am worth nothing. So you start to repress these feelings and you start to feel I am worth nothing. Everybody else is worth more than me. Therefore, I should be a doormat. And so it can have that negative effect too in that regard.
Yeah.
So that's where I'd say the difference is between you have to serve others and self-actualization. Self-actualization is recognizing the strengths and, you know, things you have to offer and then wanting to offer that to others. You know, be whatever it may be, whatever you're good at. I happen to be good at nursing and teaching. Therefore, I get to do something that helps other people whilst also educating myself and doing something I enjoy.
So I'm with the whole like helping others and stuff. So my legacy at work before I quit was I came up with a training packet, and then I came up with guidelines for certain things, and like you could construe it as a way of like, oh, he was helping people through like it was his job to go and help people. I did it because one, we're still using that stuff even though I had quit for like 2 years and came back. They were still using my stuff. That's my legacy. That's still continuing. But it wasn't necessarily to help people, it was to help me so that way here's all the information I can give you. Now you don't have to bother me. And my legacy is so
Exactly.
strong and it's beautiful.
Yes.
And I don't have to do anything.
And that is important. That's what I'm talking about. The Christian attitude suppresses that. You are still being altruistic in your actions, helping people, but just because you're doing it for selfish reason doesn't make it any less beneficial to society.
Well, I agree
And
with that.
the other question that I would have is, it really comes down to what God are you praying to? Not in like the what concept of the God, but literally like, are you praying for more money, or are you actually praying to be a better person? Because what people I think outside of Christianity don't realize is that prayer is literally meditation. You sit alone in a room with yourself and you have nothing to do but go over your thoughts. And so what you're focusing on is what you are feeding yourself in that way. So if you're focusing on the God who wants you to be a better person, your mind is like, all right, what can I do to be a better person? Here are some answers. And then you take that voice, that's your conscious or whatever it is, and you say, oh, that's God, when really it's your own arrow trying to point you. And that's why I really like the concept of meditation, because it takes the religiousness out of it and it says, no, concentrate on your thoughts. What are you thinking? Why are those thoughts coming into your mind?
See, I think that's really important too, because I remember I went through this phase where I read something that, you should always be thankful, and so you should always thank God because, He really gave you so much stuff and so on and so forth. And so, there was this 6 months time span where every time I thought about it, I was like, thank you, God, for this. Thank you for this. And I have this to be thankful for. And this amazing thing happened where suddenly my world was a lot more positive.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. And then I started watching things about training your mind and your thoughts, and it's like, oh my gosh, I literally just self-helped and didn't even realize it, because all I was focusing on was everything I was thankful for.
I had a moment like that when I was studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. I did that for a year, and I was like, I'm out of religion. It's not for me. I'm gonna focus on the earth is my being of power, and then it was. My buddy was like, here, come sit down with us in the study and see what it's about, because it does tie in science with religion sometimes. So, for the longest time, I was it was a year-long stint that I was really into I read the Bible.
Did you wear the suit? Wait.
Yeah, I had to dress nice. I sat in, even though I wasn't baptized, I still got to sit in, but I had to dress nice. And so I was reading the Bible, and I was taking not bits and pieces. I was reading a lot of the Bible, because they did it all in an order. So you would read one chapter of the Bible and so on and so forth, one book or whatever. And so for the longest time I was really into it, and it made me a better person. I was just and then all of a sudden I was in it for so long and made friends with a lot of people that I actually saw the inner workings of it and how terrible it was. And I was like, holy shit, I cannot support this. I need to get out and be out of this. But in retrospect, did it make me a better person for that year? Yeah. I stopped doing the bad
that's because
stuff.
you are a good person without them.
Yeah.
If you're a shitty person, no matter how much religion you have, you're still a shitty person.
Use it to justify your shittiness.
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing that I want to say is that I've had a lot of turbulent times in my life, and so the positive for me that came from Christianity, spirituality, whatever you want to say, is that it set my life up for success in a way that I was dealing with a lot of personal things, and it made my life go in a direction where I married a woman who was very kind, very nice, very sweet. She would have been a great mother. She would have been a fan, just all these things that were great, very open-hearted. And because of my Christianity and my faith, I had that set up. Now, had I lived in, the 1500s, that would have been fine and dandy, would have been great. We would have had a great life, but we live in a different culture. And so what ended up happening was it suppressed certain parts of myself, like the fact that I was gay, and it made me hide those things, which ends up hurting people more in the long run. And so even though I was so confused and didn't know what was going on, Christianity still set me up for a life that was very beneficial to me. It really helped me realize a lot of things about myself. And all of that came from those basic things I learned as a child, because my home life was terrible, and the only moral structure I had was church. And it taught you only have sex with somebody who's important, so you're not going to get venereal diseases. You only marry somebody who's kind, who wants to be a Christian, who goes out of their way, so they have a big heart and are open and accepting to you. So those concepts did help me in my life, and they helped me actually be able to confront the fact that, I do have all of this other stuff going on, and it helped me find my path to that. Even though it was a longer path than most, without that faith, I think I probably would end up killing myself before I found out why I was depressed, which was because I was hiding my homosexuality. So in some ways, it's good, but I'd rather have it not have taken 25 years to get there.
So I think AA actually does it right. So
when you get
to that part, you don't have to, God does not have to be your God. Your God can be whatever you want it to be. But you do have to have this higher power that you're accountable to. And I think that can be anything. I don't really care what your higher power is.
Unless it's a rape monster. It tells you to rape them.
But that's not good. That's evil.
There's Satanists out there, bro.
Well, Satanists aren't evil.
People. Yeah, some of them
right,
are.
But
non-evil things was kind of implied in her sentence.
Yeah. So, anyway.
How do you determine what's evil, though? without a solid base of God.
Aren't we talking about spirituality?
We're talking about religion.
I'm
sorry.
We're talking about spirituality.
Just
okay.
looking for clarification.
So, I do think it's important to have something that's a higher power than yourself, and not even a higher power, but something that is more meaningful even than you, something that you can answer for. So, like you said, nature. You know, if nature is your, higher power, you're going to do what you can to help protect it and reserve it and take care of it versus destroying the world.
No, for everyone, I'm not no damn tree hugger.
Oh,
well,
sure.
I still go out and shoot shit, but
I think the bigger problem with religions, and this isn't just a problem of religion, it's with every thought process, is dogmatism. You take any thought process too far, you will become a bad person. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you're a naturalist, you're like, yeah, I just want to save the planet, and then you're, like, trying to tear down everything we've created to help us as a society, you're not helping. We need to figure out a way to integrate both of them. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that is what I love about the yin-yang, is it is that balance. There is no good, there is no light, but there needs to be balance between the two, because you can't have one without the other. It just doesn't happen. Dogmatism. Sorry. I completely threw off your thought process.
You did. So I'm a Taoist, and so Taoism isn't a religion. It's a philosophy.
Right.
However, if at some point it crossed and now people consider it a religion, although it never was.
Right.
It was a moral code, a guide that was literally forced out of this guy at a checkpoint, so he had to write a book.
That's right, yeah, you told me about that.
So, it's literally just this guy wrote a book. It's not even a very big book.
Right.
And then out of this came a way of thinking about things and a way of analyzing things. And then people took it, and a lot of people took it and turned it into a religion. Like they pray and they hold rituals. There were no basis for it. They literally made it up. They made up rituals for it.
Yep.
Even though, again, it was a philosophy. And so imagine if they were able to do that with something that had no
religious connotation.
Now imagine something that from the get-go was supposed to be religious.
Yes, yeah, it's
Now,
so much easier.
Yeah,
Yep.
so...
I think there's just too much bastardization of stuff like that. Like, I think Sashi Tharoor, he was talking about, he had a speech and he was talking about Hinduism. And, there was no... I'm not going to do it justice. I'll have to find it at some point and share it with you guys. But basically, he said that the whole idea of Hinduism changed based on Western culture and influence. So they had this... It was basically, again, like a set of rules, and then Western civilization came in and was like, no, why are you doing it this way?
Yes and no. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but what's happened, though, is there was a big time period around the time when the Beatles found India, basically, and all this interest all of a sudden happened with India and their gods and everything, and so a few people went over and got the Cliff Note version of it, and then they came back and started, doing all this shit, and it's like they barely understood it.
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about.
Well, I will say the one good thing that we need to remember about religion is that it was created and still helps societies function.
Yes.
Now, in the way where if you progress too quickly, because you always have people in the cities, okay? The people in the cities are going to be more civilized, they're going to have a different way of thinking, and then you're going to have people who don't have those influences, who are stuck in the old religious views. If you try and change their worlds too much, too quickly, there is going to be a backlash, just like what happened with Trump. That was literally the backlash for everybody saying, just cut the Midwest out. We don't even need them. It's like, fuck you. We're all still here. And but I mean, you think about even how that went down in the communist countries. There was too many people who were not committed to this idea, and too many people at the top who said, I don't give a shit, submit or die. And that's how you end up with these slaughters, is you try and progress too quickly. So there is this thing where the people in the power who are trying to make these movements happen have to realize you might not like religion, you might not like that, but that's what those people believe. You need to fight it on that basis.
So the question is, though, how can you adapt the good values that spirituality or religion bring to society and adapt it to a modern society? How can you make it so that you retain the social norms and the stability without persecuting somebody or isolating? No.
Isolating.
Well, that's where the New Age movement comes in.
Okay.
Because the New Age movement is all about, spirituality and acceptance.
And Christianity was a New Age movement.
Yes.
It was literally, because, Jesus was a Jew, and all he was trying to say was, do you guys notice how all the priests are kind of ignoring all the real problems, and they act like they're holy, but it's not actually helping, all the whores, tax collectors, and all the people who are downtrodden? And people are all like, yeah, I like that message. He is teaching good things. And yeah, that's how religion progresses, is you have a revolutionary leader. But at this point in age, when everybody feels they could be a revolutionary leader, we do need a new system to navigate that.
So, but at the core of everything, I think if you stuck to a couple basic ideas, if you simplified it, be nice to others.
Mind your own damn business.
See, I don't agree with that because sometimes people need help and they don't know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
But if everything you do is the road to hell is paved with your best intentions. But if you're actually trying to do the best thing and you're not imposing your will on others, and can't really hurt things.
I was going to say,
bad.
do unto others what you would have them do unto you. I mean, that's just the rule across the board. What we need to do is we need to look at religion. We need to look at the commonalities, which, by the way, happen to be love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness, things like that. We need to use those to move us forward. We need to stop with the stuff that divides us.
I think you hit a good point there. Is if you were to line them all up and make a spreadsheet and find the things that they all share, if you just stuck to that one column, you really can't go any wrong there because it's
These are
universal
every
core
culture
values.
has realized are important, and you need to be able to take those concepts and move them out of your tribe. And that's something that Christianity was able to do, because they're like, listen, if you say he's God, you can be part of our tribe and we'll attribute all this to you. My other point was my favorite example of what the base moral should be is Sam Harris's. We can all imagine the very worst possible worlds. Anything that will move us further away from the total torture of every human is what we should be basing our fundamentals on.
So, if you could say 7 things that are common across everything that would be core for society, what would you say they are?
Some form of meditation where you are, looking at your own thoughts.
Okay.
Caring about others. Oh, we're doing 7, huh?
Caring for those who can't care for themselves.
Okay.
That's caring for.
Well, so
Yeah,
caring
I
for
do see-
others,
yes, I see
right?
what you mean.
Because there's
Yes.
a difference. Because there are homeless and widows, and people that do need people to take care of them because they can't.
I don't think you can get anywhere with dualism going on. So you need to be able to say you do have like the yin yang, like the light dark. You can't take it as good bad. It has to be what it is. So I think that's important.
So the way Taoism explains it is there is no good and there is no bad. It's the same coin.
Yes, exactly. I think that needs to be a core tenet. Honestly, I think a giant one is proper education. Like, if I was creating a religion, that would be a big one for me, is education should take preference over a lot of other things we're doing. Let's see, so that's 5. We need 2 more.
I can't say I remember all of your other ones.
So I honestly think loving yourself is important.
Oh, yeah, that should definitely be one. That is
Because
definitely
if you can't love yourself,
you
how
can't
can you
love
love
anybody
others?
else.
So, and then the last one, I think, is compassion. I mean, I think, yes, it kind of encompasses everything, but if you are truly compassionate, it makes everything fall into place.
Well, and what about taking that another level and not just compassionate, but empathizing? Empathizing with people.
Well, but at the same time, though, there are a lot of people who have a hard time empathizing. They can't get into that culture of other people. So how do those people move forward?
Well,
in that
I feel like empathy can be learned to some degree.
I do agree.
You need to put effort into it, where some people it comes natural. But empathy is just putting yourself in their shoes, like trying to see things from their eyes.
Perspective. And that's why empathy can be so powerful, because you're trying to look at it through a lens from somebody else's perspective, and that can be a very eye-opening experience for most people.
And you got to add the 8th one, which is just no dogma, no like. But how do you instill that?
So, if the problem with that is that seems to be part of our society as well, because every single thing we do turns into dogma.
Yes.
That's the problem with colleges.
Well, and I would say one, no persecution. Like, you just know you can't single out anybody.
It's
It's
another-
just a part of human nature.
Exactly.
If you're different than
screw
me.
human nature.
Well, yeah, but I mean that just
So,
I
drives
think we
us.
are getting
Here's the
there.
thing, though. Here's the thing. It is part of human nature because of what he was saying. If you're different from me, you're automatically I'm gonna look at you different. However, the thing that trumps everything, like you said, empathy would solve that.
Yes.
So if you develop empathy, you won't persecute
Persecute.
anybody
Yeah.
because you will see through their eyes. You'll understand how that would feel.
If you do that in like a retail setting, like I try to do that all the time at work. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I would be just as upset as you are if that happened to me. Let's make this right. And you can just see there's something breaks in them because they had this
You
plan.
just humanized yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
They had this plan to come up and tear you a new one because you're some sort of robot that reads off of a speech. And then the moment that you attempt to put yourself in their shoes, they crack and they don't know how to handle themselves. And then they're like, oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, let's.
Yeah.
Well, here's what would make it better for me. And then you're just like, we're gonna
Yeah,
Yeah, I can help you with that.
Well, again, we talked about this before. We tend to imitate what we see.
Yes.
So if somebody is being very empathetic towards you, you are gonna try and be empathetic towards them, and it's almost like a feedback. So I don't know if you know how feedback works with a microphone and a speaker. So basically, the microphone picks up the speaker, and then the speaker emits it again, and so it creates a loop that just raises in volume because it amplifies.
Yeah.
So empathy has a similar effect. If I'm empathetic towards you, you feel that because it is something you feel, and then you feel it towards me, and then I feel it back, and it just
keeps
gets
going
better
on
to
and
the
on.
point where it's like,
Absolutely.
why was I upset with it? Kind of deal, you know?
See,
And then back to something that you said, that, it's within us to be like, oh, you're different than me, and so you're going to view them differently. What we need to get away from in that regards is there's nothing wrong with noticing differences in people. It's when we automatically assume because you're different, I'm better.
Yes.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is what's
That
not
is true.
okay, and that's what needs to change.
And that is something that
because
is
differences are good.
Yes, okay, so that is something that is happening very big time in our culture. Every time there's anything going on, it is always race based. And it's like, why? Why does it need to be this way? Can we not just feel these same feelings for every
It
human?
comes down to one of two things. Either what Megan just said about you somehow, because it's different, you think you automatically go defensive, and you think that what you have is better. And so now you become very defensive.
Yes.
Whereas it's not a better or worse situation. It's different, and it has things that you don't have. If you join, everything's better because their weaknesses might be your strength, and vice versa.
Yep.
United, you get rid of weakness.
Yes, and that is why diversity needs to be such a big thing, but it shouldn't be the ultimate goal. Does that
So
make sense?
actually, I disagree.
It-
I
it-
think
yeah.
diversity is one of the most powerful things we have access to, because as an educator, having even a diverse faculty, the amount of experience we bring to our students is huge. And then even the way you process and think about things, I mean, it's just so beneficial to have that diversity in everything you do.
I guess I'm looking at it more from the perspective of the person who's never been around another group of people. Like, I think we can encounter that a lot where we live in these rural areas. You don't have a lot of,
So, I want to say technically we have though, because as a species we all came from technically the same place.
Yep.
We just migrated and expanded out and changed locations and then became our own little separate tribes, and we evolved based on our locations with our skin color. So I think if people just understood, you're no different than I am. Yeah, you're from Puerto Rico. It's the United States territory. I was born in the States. I'm not better than you because we're the same freaking people. Just like somebody from, China or Africa or wherever, we're all the same.
Yes.
Yes,
we just
we're
need
all
to be
human
like
beings.
cool about it.
Cool
Just be
about
cool,
it.
man. Just
Well,
chill.
and the other thing too is diversity is more than just race. It's
Yes.
more than
Okay,
where
I'm
you
sorry.
came
That
from.
was the point I was trying to get to. Is that we need to take race out of diversity.
Yep.
Well, it's a part of diversity, but we need to recognize there's other pieces to it. I would not say take race out of diversity, because it is an important part of it. But we need to understand that there's more than race to diversity. There's cultural practices, religious beliefs,
Take color out
experiential.
of diversity.
So I don't think you should even acknowledge it, if you will.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
I gotcha. So, but the point is, there's no reason to remove it or even not think about it, because it is a part of it, and it's all part of everything. Everything is different. Everything has no two things are alike. Even twins are different.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you have twins. You'd be that good.
I mean, they're not identical.
But you get the point.
But yeah, but there's very, like, you would, like, their attitudes are the same. Sure. They look relatively similar. Yes. But one acts in a different way than the other.
Right.
And that's just part of being human. Like, I don't act the same as
Yeah.
Jan.
Right.
If Jan and I don't act the same as my brother. I don't act the same as my sisters. So we all bring, and that's what's really cool about, like, even family dynamics. Is, like, we all bring something different. I've got the looks in the family. Everyone else has got something. I have yet to figure it out. But, I mean, like, the point still stands. It's like, even amongst our own tribes, if you will, we all have something different.
So the worst thing that we can do is get stuck thinking in the same way.
Yes.
What diversity does for us is it brings new viewpoints. It brings new ways of tackling issues, new ways of even talking or thinking and doing things.
Yep.
That's why it's so important.
I agree.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think
that pretty much summed it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any final thoughts?
The problem is like, I don't think about this stuff too much. So I've just been regurgitating what I've read. So I really don't have anything to, like, add to it or, like, improve upon, because I am completely useless in this.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
we all know
stop.
you're useless.
Oh.
But anyway, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think as far as spirituality goes, because that's where we started, I think it's important that people have spirituality, and we need to stop focusing on how my spirituality is different than your spirituality.
Yeah.
And the same goes with diversity. We need to
Focus on the
recognize
good.
how much diversity and spirituality can add to what we're doing than, trying to break it apart. Or,
No,
about you, Sean?
that was pretty much my point. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's about it. That wraps up today's episode.
and
Come
that's
back
how
next-
we society.
Come back and hang out with us next time. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the conversation, come and meet us again, and like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment. We really want to hear about your feedback, and hit that little bell for us, and you can get updates every Friday for when we put out a new video.